I'm minded to support the amendment, but maybe it's because I'm a little uncertain about how we're going to ensure that what we all want, which is to protect the public, is guaranteed by this bill. I do worry about a certain mission creep, and in second reading, a lot of people quoted Sir John Saunders in terms of saying doing nothing is, in my view, not an option. But I also quoted Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, who said equally the protect duty must not be so prescriptive as to prevent people enjoying normal life. And as I understood the aim of this amendment, it was to simply ensure that we don't forget what the point of the bill is. And whether we like it or not, regulatory powers have a tendency of leaving their original aim and growing or going elsewhere. And so I, in that sense, want to ensure that we don't forget what this bill is about, and if that means this amendment. And it might seem silly to say, well, we won't forget what this amendment's about, but actually, quite a lot of the evidence in relation to this bill doesn't indicate that the measures, the very specific measures in this bill, will actually keep people safe from terrorism. So I don't doubt it puts a huge amount of responsibility on individuals, but I don't know that the end result is going to be what we intend it to be. And so I was of a mind to think that this amendment might help keep focus. That was one of the things that I was attracted to. One of the things that's nagging me, and I'm just going to raise it here because it seems appropriate place, is that if we're going to say that the aim is to protect people from terrorism, we also need to know what we mean by terrorism. And I'm not being glib, because the government itself has noted that this bill is partly in response to the changing nature of terrorism, that we now have lone wolf terrorists. It's not straightforward. We can't just rely on the secret services and so on and so forth. And so the changing nature of those terror threats requires this regulation. But I don't know that we're closer to knowing what that definition of terrorism is. So we can all say, as we all will, that we want to pass a piece of legislation that will keep people safe from terrorism, yet we've decided that we don't know how to define terrorism. And if you think of the official confusion in relation to Axel Redekabana, as one journalist pointed out last week, to say that he was known to the authorities is an understatement. The point that the noble Lord Carlisle pointed out was this is about putting responsibility on individuals. But in that instance, it's hard to name an authority or individuals that didn't know the threat that was embodied by that young man. The police, social services, mental health services, counter-extremism services, education, establishment, Childline. I mean, he actually went and said, I'm going to be a mass murderer. And we all know about the rice in the Al-Qaeda manual and so on, and yet he wasn't labelled a terrorist. And so I worry that if we are confused about our definitions, that actually, in relation to this bill as well, that there could be some problems. And I also worry, just to finally, on this point, that precisely because we've decided, or that we've declared, and I don't challenge that there's something in this, that terrorism is changing, such that somebody who, created ricin and had an Al-Qaeda manual was not labelled a terrorist and therefore slipped through, he was actually didn't fall through the net, he was caught in the net, but nothing was done nonetheless, as somebody pointed out. But at the same time, we have an expansive slippage between the notions of extremism and terrorism, and it's all become very unclear about what we mean. It might be a joke that over the weekend, it was revealed that the report that was commissioned, if rejected by the government, featured a reading list that was an indicator of dangerous far-right extremism that can lead to terrorism, that included a viewing and watch list that featured Michael Portillo's The Great British Railways programme and Yes Minister as indications of a problem. Now, the reason I'm, that's like, what? How mad? But the reason I'm mentioning it is because I don't want mission creep in relation to definitions. I don't want mission creep in relation to the regulatory aspects of this bill, because I'm terrified of the unintended consequences for community organising, civil society, venues and so on. I just think there's nothing wrong with a reminder very specifically of what we want this bill to do, and that's what attracted me at least to this amendment.